Voilà. Bon, moi je peux m'en plus 15. Don't speak, hein. Là, tu m'entends rien, par contre. C'est vraiment bien. Il n'y avait personne pour moi. Hein? On a essayé. Demande à Christine, elle était ici hier même.
Super bien passé la projection de presse. Super bien. Projection de presse. Ouais. Ça va être fini, messieurs les photographes. Et
Photographers, time is up for you.
On va commencer la conférence
And
de
we're
presse.
going to begin the press conference.
Allez. Voilà, on arrête les flashs, s'il vous plaît.
No more flash photography,
Je vais
please.
commencer par vous présenter.
First of all, I would like to introduce our guests up here at the podium. From right to left, the producer Denis Fred, producer co-producer of the Dardenne Brothers.
Ensuite,
And then
Luc Dardenne,
Luc Dardenne,
Marion Cotillard,
Marion Cotillard,
qui joue donc le rôle de Sandra.
who plays the part of
Dans
Sandra
2 jours, 1 nuit.
in 2 Days, 1 Night. Jean-Pierre Dardenne.
Donc, je vous rappelle, évidemment, vous le savez, que
As you know,
Luc et Jean-Pierre Dardenne ont
Luc
déjà eu
and
2
Jean-Pierre
fois la
Dardenne
Palme
have
d'Or.
already received the Golden Palm
Et dans
twice.
les 2 films pour lesquels ils ont eu la Palme d'Or,
And in the
vous jouez
2
déjà
films that won
Fabrizio
the
Rongioni, qui est à côté
Golden
de moi.
Palm, we had Fabrizio Rongioni, who's sitting next to me, and who plays the part of Manu in 2 Days, 1 Night.
Alors, je crois qu'il y a déjà des questions.
I think we have a number of questions already.
Oui.
Allez-y, présentez-vous s'il vous plaît.
Please introduce yourself.
Je m'appelle Jordi Oliva.
Jordi Oliva. I come from TV3
de la Catalogne, la télévision
in
publique de la
Catalonia, the state TV in Catalonia.
Merci à toute l'équipe pour
I
ce
would
film.
like to thank everyone for
J'ai
this
une question
film.
pour
I have a
Monsieur
question
Dardenne et
for
Monsieur Dardenne.
the Dardenne brothers.
Croyez-vous qu'à cause de la crise
Do you
économique,
think that owing
on
to
a
the
perdu
economic
de la
crisis, we
solidarité,
have lost
des
solidarity
valeurs,
and
et
values?
puis si en tant que travailleur du cinéma, vous vous avez
And as
trouvé
people who
dans
work
une
in
telle
the cinema,
situation,
have you ever found
dans
yourself
un
in
tel
such a
dilemme
situation
dont se trouvent
with
les
such a
personnages
dilemma
du film?
as
Enfin,
one
si la
sees
crise
in your
économique,
film?
vous qui ne faites pas un cinéma cher et que vous avez une carrière
You
solide,
have
si
a
vous a
very
touché la crise
long-standing
économique
career.
en certaine façon, pendant la
You
pré-production de ce film,
think that the
par
economic crisis
Merci.
has had any impact on the film in terms of pre-post-production? We've never experienced this kind of situation in our work as filmmakers. Had we experienced such a situation, we would never have suggested the agreement proposed in the film. It's a kind of blackmail, and that's not what we want to do. The economic crisis doesn't foster solidarity. I think, however, that solidarity has always been something that has to be built. It's not a given. Even in the past, when there were more major social movements, social unrest, in the 60s, for example, in my region, there were major social movements. And when a strike was organized because a plant was to be closed, workers who wanted to go on strike had to speak first with their spouses and say, well, the union will give us compensation, but it will be less than the wages I earn. So do you agree? It wasn't easy to show solidarity, in other words, because there's a drop in income. I'm talking about showing solidarity in a factory, for example. So solidarity is a sort of a moral commitment. It's based on a moral decision. When you have a vote by raised hands, well, you may tend to say, yes, let's go on strike because the union representative is there, but with a secret ballot, things may pan out differently. I think that there are still people, as you can see in the film, who show solidarity, because that's the storyline. You see how this woman, like Sandra, she's not a militant, she doesn't belong to any political party, but what she says to herself is, I'll go and see the people with the help of her husband, and people change their minds because they actually see Sandra and they're touched, they're moved by her state, the fact she's very upset, and they decide to vote for her. So I think one can still show solidarity today. This is what we depict in the film.
Hello, my name is Fernando Hernández for Fila 7 magazine from Spain. I want to ask the directors, because you said you were managing the screenplay for over 10 years, and I want to know if the ending of the movie was always the same, and if it's a real fact story or is an allegoric thing. Thank you.
I usually answer in English, but as Marion is here, she's my English teacher. She's very strict, so I think I'd better speak French. If I speak English, there'll be a real scene later on. The end of the film, well, we took some time to find it because we made several different proposals, but none of them really satisfied us. That's how we work together. We're like a sort of a little machine. And depending on the proposals made, the machine gets going or not. When the machine doesn't get going, it means the proposal isn't right. And then the end struck us as obvious, the one we hit upon. Throughout the film, people say, well, put yourself in my shoes. Put yourself in my stead. And we thought, well, we could finish like that. We want Sandra to put herself in the position of the people she went to see. And the only answer she could give, and which would lend meaning to the film, is the answer that she actually says at the end. If we don't want to tell the same story, it's better then that we don't work together as brothers.
Hi, sorry.
Pardon.
Was it allegorical? The word allegory is difficult to use. We've tried in this ending to show how the solidarity Sandra encountered over these 2 days and night, and how the solidarity showed by her husband changed her. And thus, at the end, she was able to say, well, we really fought hard, I'm very happy. One might think this is an allegory, but for us, she has changed thanks to this solidarity. We show how solidarity can actually change people. And the fact that people say no, and that she really fought.
The Associated Press, excuse me, my English. A question for Ms. Cotillard. We saw you last year playing a poor underdog that was virtuous, and yet again this year you're playing a poor, virtuous underdog. What was the interest of you playing these roles that I see some similarities with? And a second question, whereas Jean-Pierre and Luc Dardenne have won the Palme d'Or, Cannes has never awarded you Best Actress, and people are saying your time has come now. How would you comment to those people who are saying this?
I love complex parts.
Alors moi, je vois toutes ces femmes comme
I see all these women.
Comme des femmes, enfin les films dont vous parlez, donc
well, you've referred to certain films in which I played a part, Blood Ties, for example, and others.
Oui,
I view these women as people who are truly fighting for survival, and they discover things within themselves that they didn't realize they had.
C'est ce qui m'intéresse
And
dans
that's what
l'humain,
truly
quelque part.
interests me in the human condition.
Très touchée par
I'm
les,
deeply touched
par les survivants,
by
par les gens
survivors.
qui, j'arrive pas à trouver le.
I can't find the right
survivant,
words,
c'est pas,
says the speaker,
forcément,
because survivor isn't
Non, mais
really
des-
the word
voilà,
I'm
des
looking
gens
for,
qui-
says
des
Marion
gens qui s'en
Cotillard.
sortent. Voilà,
I'm
qui se
deeply
sortent
moved by
de
people who manage, who
n'importe
cope,
quoi d'une situation
despite
ou,
circumstances,
d'un
despite
handicap,
certain situations, despite
et-
their handicap, for
et
example.
ça m'apprend sur l'humain, en fait, de visiter les...
I learn a lot
cœurs et
about
les âmes
human
différents.
beings, the human condition, when I explore these people's
Puis, pour la
souls.
deuxième partie de votre
As to the
question,
second
c'est-
part of your question,
je sais pas trop quoi dire.
I don't really know
Je suis,
what to
je suis
say.
heureuse d'être là avec,
I'm very
avec les
pleased
films
to
de
be
frères.
here
C'est-
with the Dardenne Brothers
je pense
film.
jamais trop à
I never
ces
really
choses-là, je dois
think
avouer.
about those matters, I must admit.
C'est pas. Je dois dire que je suis assez heureuse de ne pas
I'm
avoir
actually
à me
quite pleased
protéger,
not to have to protect myself.
à essayer de ne
Not,
pas y penser.
I'm quite happy
Je pense que je dois avoir une.
not to think about such matters. Maybe it's a form of natural defense, natural protection.
De mon fonctionnement.
That's not the way I work as a person.
Quand des choses arrivent,
However, when things happen, like awards and prizes, I greatly appreciate it.
Voilà, qui amène pour un temps beaucoup de joie.
It's something that gives me great
qui peut aller
joy.
aussi dans une carrière comme
And
j'ai vécu,
in a
avec,
career
avec l'Oscar, par
like
exemple,
mine, well, with the Oscar, for example,
beaucoup de projets, beaucoup de beaux
that
projets.
can lead on to many wonderful
Mais voilà, j'ai la chance
projects.
de pas-
I'm very
de
fortunate
jamais espérer
because
un prix.
I never hope to get a given prize or award.
Peter Paul Hood, télévision allemande. J'ai aussi une question pour
I
vous,
also have a
Cotillard.
question for Marion Cotillard.
Je me souviens quand vous
I
avez
remember
parlé dans la conférence de
when
presse
you
de Jacques Audiard, il y a
spoke
quelques
at Jacques
années.
Audiard's press
Et,
conference a couple of
Mathieu
years
Chenas
ago.
a commenté que quand vous avez trouvé la première fois dans le plateau, vous étiez complètement
You said
changé.
that someone said that when you turned up on the set for the first time, you were completely changed already. You'd already embodied the character. And what about this time round? How did you portray this working woman? How did you really get into the character? It's quite complex to answer that kind of a question. I realized that when I tried to answer this question, I gave rather vague answers, rather broad answers. I just set aside myself and become that other person. Of course, this involves a whole process. You start a voyage of discovery. You start learning about somebody else. When I accept a screenplay and I agree to a new venture, it's because I've fallen in love with the screenplay, with the storyline, with the character, with the actors, with the directors, with whom I'm going to experience all this. I don't have a method of work per se. The method of work hinges on the project, in fact. That's the way I like going about my work. It's very exciting because I never really know what path things will take. But I love researching a character, trying to understand how that person works. When I try to visit the very inside of a person, I know the appearance will just be right automatically because the physical behavior will follow on from what that person has inside. The way we express ourselves, our gait, the way we walk says a great deal about our personality. But that comes naturally once I've found the inner workings of the character. I look for certain keys which enable me to understand the character. Sometimes I don't even have to fully understand the person. That was true of the film I did with Jacques Audiard. I did a lot of research and I realized that that wasn't the right path. I realized that even for me it was necessary to retain a mysterious side, because otherwise that would actually damage the character. That's what I wanted to say. In any event, I try to work, even if this work is a bit vague, I try to work as much as possible in terms of going as deep as I can into the character, to be able then to totally set aside the work aspect, to actually become that person. I give up my own identity and actually become that person. Once I'm on the set, if I've found all these keys, I don't really have much to do. All I need to do is to hand the car keys to that character, and the character drives me, rather than the opposite. I'd like to ask an additional question about your work with the Dardenne brothers. And I'd like to ask the same question to Fabrizio. There's a special way with the Dardenne brothers of preparing characters, of rehearsing. Fabrizio, could you talk to us about that? Do you think it's necessary, or is this just a kind of concession because you're working with the Dardenne brothers? You've done several films with them. With the Dardenne brothers, the idea of rehearsing is absolutely fundamental. All these scenes are rehearsed, or nearly all of them, before the shooting. We rehearse for 3 weeks before the shoot, and then we rehearse the day we shoot as well. There's several different takes, and we try to achieve a given result. The idea is to achieve something absolutely perfect. The movement of the camera must fit in perfectly with the movement of the characters. So we try to strike a perfect balance, in other words, between all these movements. I believe that rehearsing is therefore essential. It's a key word, in fact, in their way of making films. Marion, what's absolutely wonderful is that, well, in addition, we're talking about a whole series of sequences in this film. We had to find a given movement. Because we rehearse a lot, we get to know each other very well. And you have to find this right movement of the bodies and the cameras. It's like a dance, it's like a rhythm, it's like a given pace. That's very important. In that manner, we save a lot of time with the actual shooting. We can focus on the acting exclusively. And for an actor or an actress, that's stupendous. There are no obstacles on the path. There are no obstacles in the way of what we are portraying and saying in the film. You have the tale that unfolds, untrammeled. So it's very important. It's of paramount importance to rehearse in this way. And the images, the camera follow the movement. Yes, because you don't just rehearse sitting at a table. No, we rehearse on the set with the other actors. In fact, we're also dressed as we appear in the film. The rehearsals, therefore, are very sophisticated, but we don't just focus on the acting, even if everything is intertwined and interdependent. Pierre Germain, La Meuse, Belgium. I have a question for Marion Cotillard. What attracts you in the Dardenne brothers' films? What encouraged you to accept their proposal for this film? Did you change your opinion after the shooting, or was this initial impression borne out? What pleased you most? I knew. Well, I've always dreamt of working with these directors who would lead me into the deepest details, the finest details of a character in the film. I've always sensed in their films that there would be a huge amount of work involved in order to attain the perfection they achieve in their films. What moves me as a spectator when I watch their films, and I've seen all their films, and I've loved them all, I felt bowled over. When we started rehearsing one day, and this is quite rare, even if this may appear strange, they were speaking of the spectators during the rehearsal. And the Dardenne brothers turned to us and said, "Oh, we talk a lot about these spectators. Sometimes on sets, you're not allowed even to talk about these spectators. I don't know why, perhaps because it's not the right time or something else." Whereas Jean-Pierre and Luc make their films for their audiences, whom they want to experience and feel certain things, and we're always surprised as a result. In their films, one cannot say they're just art house films because there's so many things in each film. There's so many components, so many elements. We could talk of films very much based on reality, but the images are so beautiful. I love the film The Sun as a spectator. It is a tremendous emotional experience. It's rife with surprise. I had the impression that I was on a sort of a roller coaster ride. As of the very first images, one senses that they want spectators to experience something that's totally exceptional. That's why I love their films as a spectator. And that's also why the experience is so extraordinary. That's just the way they go about their work. And for me, this is therefore an overwhelming experience. I've learned so much from it. It's one of the most wonderful cinematographic experiences I've ever had.
Bonjour, Émilie Olivier.
Émilie Olivier. Good morning. I have a question for the Dardenne brothers. This is the first time that you have hired such a glamorous, world-renowned star as an actress. Is this linked to the artistic side of the film, or did you just want to shoot a film with Marion Cotillard? Both, but we really wanted to do a film with Marion. We met her in Rust and Bone. We were minor co-producers in the film, and we wanted to meet her. So my brother and I thought, well, when we meet Marion, we'll see how she reacts, and we'll talk to her about the character, who was at the time a doctor in a rural area. We met Marion. My brother and I looked at each other and we said instantly, "We'd like to work with you." She said, "Thank you, I would like to work with you too. So we just sort of came together at that moment. Marion talked about a roller coaster. Well, we sort of we got along instantly. Something happened. And my brother and I went home and said, well, let's continue writing the screenplay, thinking about Marion. And then we changed the screenplay, and we started on the tale of Sandra. When we started with the story of Sandra, we took up an old screenplay, in fact, and we immediately thought about Marion, and we wanted to be absolutely sure that she'd be interested, because we weren't talking about a young doctor anymore, but a young working woman. And she said to us, yes, I like the story, I like the character, and I want to work with you. And we said, well, we want to work with you too. It was perfect. So that was the initial starting point. When you work with an actress like Marion, we know she's a very great actress. She's a star. She is a sort of an icon. We're not here to say, oh, we're going to break the icon or what have you. No, that's not our point. Some people like to speak in those terms. We knew that Marion wanted to become Sandra. We knew that she'd be able to do all this work, understanding the innermost nature of the character. We achieve this through rehearsing. We managed to enable actors to enter our world and give everything they have. And it's thanks to the rehearsing and the work we did together. This is very physical. Walking, you walk, you fall, you pick yourself up, you pick up the phone, you have to walk with these shoes rather than those during the rehearsing. There are a lot of very down-to-earth details. It's very physical. It's very tangible. It was a challenge for us. And we wanted to involve Marion, and she wanted to be involved. As I said earlier on, it's not because we wanted to do this. She wanted to work with us, and her husband, Fabrizio, attended all the rehearsals which concerned him. He also wanted to work things in the same way, but something magical has to happen during the rehearsing. At a given point in time, we realized that she was finding things, Fabrizio was finding things. They were just positioned as it should be, with the right distance between the two of them. She'd already had a depression. The husband knows, oh, she's going to get depressed again. But should he be close to her, stand higher up, treat her as a child? Should he stand back and be further away? All these little things you work out during the rehearsals. And of course, the actors contributed a very great deal themselves. How can I put this? We're here with our cameras in a real set. And we're looking, we're trying things out. We're trying to find the most simple movement for the camera. And that movement is dictated by what the actors find during the rehearsals. We help them to find the right things, of course. I remember, I think it was the second evening, because we watched all the rushes during the rehearsals, and Jean-Pierre and I said to each other, well, here, we've got Sandra, who's exactly right. Fabrizio is exactly right. They found exactly the right movements, exactly the right positions, the right gravity in the physical sense of the word.
Hi, Baz Bammy Boy from Daily Mail. Congratulations. Hi, Marianne. Nice to see you. You've talked, the actors and the directors have talked about the rehearsal period, but I wonder whether any of the encounters that Sandra has were improvised at all. I'm thinking particularly of the one that she has with Timo when he's playing football and he breaks down, and the look on your face is such, it's beautiful. I'm just wondering whether that was rehearsed, or were there moments that were improvised with any of the encounters that you had at all?
Mais,
in fact,
pour atteindre ce sentiment
to
de vérité quelque part,
portray this kind of truth while giving the impression it's an improvisation, it requires a huge amount of work. There's nothing that's actually improvised in the film.
Et sans faire de comparaison, parce que
I don't want to make comparisons because I've never worked
avec Keshish, mais
with Kenshish. But I remember my reaction when I saw L'Esquive, and I said, well, you're all so good at improvisation. And she said to me, well, absolutely nothing is improvised. Everything has been worked on in the finest detail. And I'd like to draw this parallel without really making a comparison in order to explain that you have to work a huge amount and do a lot of research in order to make things appear authentic, to give this impression that there is improvisation, yet there isn't. That means that somehow we've really succeeded, unless, of course, the improvisation is bad. I hope I've answered your question.
Louise Jury from the Evening Standard and The Independent in London. It's a question for Marion Cotillard. It follows on from something earlier. You have a kind of beauty that is extraordinary. It is not an ordinary beauty. Does it therefore make you more interested in roles that take you away from that beauty, that are social realism roles, that are very ordinary? Is that a bigger challenge for you as a consequence?
C'est très gentil.
And what you said is very kind.
Je dirais que je suis très mouvante.
I can
à savoir,
morph, can change.
Je me considère pas comme quelqu'un de
I don't view myself
moche,
as someone who's ugly.
Non, mais je veux dire.
No, what I mean to say, well, in any event,
même une femme très très belle,
even a very, very beautiful woman
se considère pas comme une femme très belle. Donc, ça,
sometimes doesn't view herself as such. It's a question of one's own self-image. I know, however,
que je peux réussir si
that
le
I
rôle me
can
demande d'être
manage, if the part requires it, to be quite beautiful, and I can also be quite ugly.
Ou alors être, là, on
Or,
parle de beauté,
well, here we're
beauté,
talking
ce qui n'a pas vraiment de sens.
about beauty. I'm not sure this is very meaningful in the film, but I know I have this physical ability to,
à pouvoir, être,
yes, to be...
Oh là là, comment je vais répondre à cette question?
How can I answer this question?
Oui, voilà. Voilà, me transformer.
I can transform myself. That's what I'm trying to say.
Plutôt pas mal.
And that's quite an asset in the job I do.
J'ai complètement oublié votre question du coup.
I've forgotten what your question was.
Je suis perdue.
I'm lost.
Non, mais en tout cas,
well, in any case, what was your question?
J'ai répondu.
Have I answered it?
It was whether it was more interesting to you to try, if you like, to escape your beauty.
Ah oui, non, bah alors voilà. Oui, c'est pour ça que j'arrivais pas trop à répondre.
Yes, absolutely. That's why I couldn't formulate a proper answer.
Oui, donc à partir du moment donné où je me considère pas comme, mais très gentiment, la façon dont.
Thank you for your very kind description.
Ça rentre jamais en ligne de compte, en fait.
That never enters into play. In fact, I'm not going to choose a part where I have no makeup and my hair isn't done. I don't ever do that kind of thing. That's not my line of reasoning, so that I can escape my specific kind of beauty kind of thing. But I know I do have this ability
à pouvoir aller physiquement
I can physically
des femmes sublimes
portray sublime women, for example,
plus de mal à
but
en même temps je suis en train de dire ça et je pense à Penelope Cruz.
Well, I'm thinking of Penelope Cruz
Don't Move,
in Don't Move, for example.
Penelope, c'est quand même vraiment
Penelope Cruz, well, it's really hard to make her look ugly.
Et ce qu'elle fait dans ce film, qui
and what she does in this film
grandes interprétations
is incredible in terms of female acting. I think it's astounding. And what she does physically, well, you don't recognize her. She looks absolutely hideous.
Donc je pense que ça peut durer des heures, ma réponse.
Of course, my answer could last for hours. Maybe I'll stop there.
Parce qu'il reste très peu de temps.
We have very little time left.
Là, une question. Oui.
Hi, I'm Natalie from Cable TV Hong Kong, and I've got a question for Marion. Last year you were here with The Immigrant, and this year with 2 Days, 1 Night. Throughout your acting career, you have tried so many different roles, but have you got any particular role in your mind that you still really want to try out or want to play?
Oh oui, Lola.
Oh yes, absolutely. There are lots and lots of things that I'd like to try.
Que j'aimerais aborder.
There are lots of things I'd like to attempt.
J'aimerais vraiment aborder
I
la
would
comédie, même le film
love
d'action. Alors, c'est pas forcément des
to
rôles,
act in an action film and a
des
comedy.
genres que j'ai pas vraiment
These are
abordés,
kinds of
qui,
films I've never really acted
que
in.
j'aime en tant que spectatrice.
And I love these kinds of films as a spectator. I hope I'll be fortunate enough one day to have this experience. As to specific parts, well, there's so very many that I can't give you a single example. I'm fascinated with the idea of portraying a man. Because it strikes me as totally impossible. So the idea excites me.
On va poser les deux dernières questions.
Last two questions?
Dans 4 minutes, on arrête.
Stop in 4 minutes' time.
Hola, Rodrigo González del diario La Tercera de Chile. I have a question from the Dardan brothers, and it's have to do with how important to they is work with female characters. Are more suitable female characters are more suitable for them for your stories, or considering that the previous film was with a female character, and Rosetta was a female character, and well, that's the question.
Sur les personnages féminins.
Female characters.
Je pense qu'il y a un désir de cinéaste
I think that
de travailler avec des comédiennes.
many directors, and certainly we as directors, like to work with women.
Au début, quelqu'un nous a dit,
right at the beginning, someone said to us, you guys,
vous travaillerez avec les acteurs, mais avec les actrices,
you'll work with actors, but you'll never succeed with actresses. There are two of you, there'll be no real desire, maybe with young 16 to 17-year-old girls, but with experienced actresses, it'll never work. And we said, well, I don't know, maybe you're right, who knows? I'm not saying that this guided us in our choices, but we've never forgotten that. Maybe the guy has really told us something really deep about ourselves that we don't realize because we're brothers. Maybe we're incapable of working with an actress because there can be no feeling of desire. I don't know. But this is something that we have forgotten. As to Sandra's tale, we thought this could never perhaps have happened to a man. Women in real life are more fragile. When it comes to employment, they find it more difficult to find another job. There are many more women who are unemployed than there are men. But that's not, of course, sufficient. That's not a sufficient motivation for working with an actress. I think Luc and I wanted to work with an actress, and we thought it would be just wonderful to work with Marion, who's a very great actress, who's a real star. And then we met, it was love at first sight, and there we go. Then, of course, you have to do a lot of work, and perhaps we should stop talking about it.
Please,
My name is Rejka Salka. I'm from Hungary, Magyar Narancs, and I would like to ask you, the Dardan brothers, how is to work together? Is it different by film and film, or it was special way how you work together in this one? Because it's such an intimate human story for me. So how do you share the task as both credited as directors and screenwriters?
de Hongrie.
Une réponse hongroise. Alors.
Donc je vais répondre pour la Hongrie.
I'll answer for Hungary.
Non, on travaille toujours de la même façon.
We always work in the same way.
On parle beaucoup de.
We talk a lot.
On parle beaucoup.
Together.
D'un personnage.
We talk about the characters, a given situation, and when we've talked a lot, we try to create a sort of a general structure for the storyline. We usually focus on a given town, a given area, and then once we have a structure, I write the screenplay. I often call my brother on the phone, because when you write something down, you change things. You don't necessarily apply the predefined structure. So I often call him up, and then when we have a first version, he reads it, and he makes his comments. I work on things again. We produce several versions, and then we have two readers for the last version. Denis Fred, who is the French producer of the film, he's our co-producer, and Delphine Thompson, who is the line director, line producer. We take account of their remarks, we get back to work, and then we do the rehearsals on the set. The actors turned up, we rehearse with them, we make the costumes, and then we're both present on the set. I don't know what the actors think, but my brother and I are sort of interchangeable on the set. We're one and the same person. We have a video monitor, which is linked to the camera. Sometimes one person watches the monitor, and the other is closer to the crew and the actors. But often we work in quite small places, so we're both behind the monitor. There are a lot of sequences, and the camera often, in fact, goes all around the scene, so it's hard not to see us. So what we try to do is sort of hide behind the camera. And we're both there to answer any questions the actors may have. That's the way we go about our work. I'd like to put a question to Denis Fred. During the creation of the film and the screenplay, are you sort of the first reader, the first spectator? How do things work? Well, this is the fifth film we've done together with Luc and Jean-Pierre. It's a question of really being there. They ask us to read the screenplay, I give my comments, I talk about the color of a given T-shirt, the set. I'm there every day to see the rushes and talk about them. We also talk about the promotion, the press conferences. So we have this tremendous friendship, in fact. He's our third brother, that's we say. Thank you very much.
Le standard, oui.
On n'est pas champion.
Allez, qu'est-ce qu'on fait là?
Merci.
Qu'est-ce qu'on fait, chef?
On va pas commencer.